How to resolve complex childhood trauma symptoms can be answered in just one simple sentence. Learn to unconsciously feel safe again around other people. But that is so much easier said than done for most of us. We might rationally understand that there is no threat today, but deep inside, on the level of the unconscious, we feel unsafe. We still don't trust other people and we feel the need to hide behind a mask to protect ourselves. And today I want to break down the challenge of complex trauma symptoms to the most fundamental and simple solution as possible. I want to find answers to the question whether there are overlooked ways how we can directly reach out to our unconscious mind where trauma memories are stored, and we will see if there are practical ways to finally feel safe again. This one is definitely a must watch, so lean back and let's resolve complex trauma together. Welcome to today's episode. My name is Robert, and today we will break down complex trauma symptoms to the most fundamental solution. And a disclaimer, I'm not a health professional. The contents in this video are not to be understood as therapeutic medical instructions or advice, and everything I say here today is based on research, my own work with therapists or personal experiences. And also I want to remind you that you can listen to this full episode on your favorite podcast platform as well, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts or YouTube. You find all the links and resources in the description below. Good. I want to give you an overview right now in the beginning, and we will start with a quick review about what the most common symptoms of childhood trauma are. But this episode is definitely about how to resolve trauma symptoms and how to break free from them. So if you want to understand more about how trauma symptoms occur, definitely watch the other episodes I've made before in the past weeks. In those past episodes, you will understand how the relationship between childhood neglect, abuse, abandonment led to wounds and therefore to trauma, and how the connections are between trauma, between codependency, narcissism, etc. We've also talked about the big 8 symptoms, and a quick reminder from my favorite paper about trauma, adult survivors of childhood trauma, complex needs, that we have these 8 symptoms we discussed broadly before. As I said, we have hypervigilance here, which is the feeling that you're constantly alert for dangers around you. We have re-experiencing, which might occur in nightmares or traumatic flashbacks in your life. Then we have altered attention and consciousness. This is when your brain stored memory differently than it actually occurred. You experienced abuse and neglect sometime, but your brain made out of it. You experience that constantly. We have emotional dysregulation, when heavy emotions such as anger, grief come up in your daily life. That's also a huge topic for people with ADHD and autism. We have interpersonal instability. That's the difficulty to maintain healthy relationships. We have also things like drug addiction in here. We have things like the fear of relationship, of closeness, or the fear of being alone in here. Then we have belief systems which are affected as a huge symptom. That's definitely everything that is related to toxic shame, to toxic guilt, to things related to your identity. If you learned as a child that you have a wrong behavior, or that you may be even wrong the way you are, then you might have an affected belief system. We have somatic symptoms. That's everything related to symptoms that show up in your body, like, for example, pressure in your chest, in your throat, in your gut, chronic fatigue, those kind of things. And we have avoidance. Avoidance is also a huge topic, a huge symptoms for trauma survivors, because many people now avoid difficult situations. For example, if you experienced in your past as a child that relationships are not a safe place, you might now avoid relationships entirely. And those symptoms appear in our daily lives for us trauma survivors, in easy words, as flaws, or what we label as challenges, and they lead to many, many different outcomes. I already gave some examples while explaining the symptoms, and we talked about them a lot in the previous episode. Adulthood flaws as an outcome of childhood complex trauma may be that you feel things you can't really explain, that you can't say no, or you always have to justify yourself, and you can't really set boundaries for yourselves. You feel needy in relationships, you have social anxieties, and sometimes appear shy, even if you are not an introvert or a shy person. You just don't know why. That is because you might have experienced trauma. Excessive needs for attention is another flaw, and then you might be afraid of loss. You might be also afraid of commitment. You might stay away from relationships, or you stay away from being alone and always have to be within a relationship. You might procrastinate, also are afraid maybe of changing things in your life. You have emotional outbreaks and dysregulation from time to time. You have panic attacks, depression, and similar symptoms. Sleeping problems, experience nightmares from time to time. Other people might appear as a threat to you. You have, as I said, chronic symptoms, chronic fatigue, or somatic symptoms such as pressure and pain in your gut, chest, or throat. And that's a list of many, many challenges and flaws many adult people experience in their lives. I think the list can be endless, but those things can appear out of simple spoken complex trauma that happened within your childhood. Good. Now I want to break down trauma healing and symptoms with you now to the most basic principles. Now let's put it in really simple terms here. In the past, in most cases, in childhood, we experienced neglect, abuse, or abandonment from our closest and beloved ones, often our parents, maybe later partners or other caretakers. We were, as a child, ready to learn everything which is necessary to survive and thrive in this world. Instead of learning to unfold our true selves, to experience our true emotions, needs, and things we don't want, we learned that it's wrong to live like this, and even worse, that we are wrong if these things are part of us, if we feel these emotions and needs. Now, our unconscious mind therefore got the message programmed to feel physically and emotionally safe around other people. We have to suppress our inner truth, specific emotions, needs, wants, and the boundaries. Say that again, that's the message we installed so deeply in our past. To feel physically safe and emotionally safe around other people, we have to suppress our inner truths, specific emotions, needs, wants, and boundaries. Now, the outcome of that is that traumatized people have two identities. One, very often, authentic and alone identity, and one, inauthentic with other people identity. Now, as you listen to the episodes before, you might know that I'm often talking about masking here. And this is actually the inauthentic with other people identity mask we put on. That's the mask we wear around other people. And by the while, also important to underline that wearing a mask is technically a good thing. It will cause damage to your life, definitely, because you're inauthentic. But our minds protect us this way, so we can feel safe around other people emotionally and physically, because we learn that specific thing to protect ourselves very early on. But the flip side definitely is that it costs us a ton of energy to keep us that mask, that it will make us behave inauthentic because we do not express specific emotions, needs, and boundaries. And therefore, it will definitely cause some damage to our lives and our relationships. And I made this graph for you up here. These are the two states, the two identities most of us as trauma survivors have. The one is, as I said, the being alone identity, where the mask is off, where you live your inner truths, hopefully where you are authentic, feel safe, and feel free and light. And around other people, you have this masked identity, this inauthentic identity, where you deny your inner truths or you don't live it, where you are inauthentic, where you feel unsafe, and where you constantly have feelings such as guilt and shame around your actual needs and boundaries. Now, this discrepancy in living our inner truths when alone and masking parts of our inner truths when we are around other people definitely, as I said, causes a lot of energy consumption, and therefore cause a lot of tension within ourselves. And this is the reason for all the blockages and for all the trauma symptoms, for all the challenges and flaws we now experience as adults. Again, remember this list I gave to you before. Now, if you now see these comparison between our identity when we are alone and our identity when we wear that mask, the question arises, why not just break the mask, be authentic, and live our inner truths 24/7? Why not just do it? The answer is that, first of all, most of the people don't even know their inner truths themselves. And even people who are really aware have their blind spots. For example, I would say, okay, I'm aware, I reflected a lot about myself, but I still have probably blind spots, and that's totally okay. And it's also totally okay not to constantly express your emotions and needs, but you have to be aware of them. That's the tricky point. And most people are not aware of their inner truths, of their inner needs and boundaries and emotions which come up from time to time. You don't have to express themselves, but you need to be aware. And second, if you try hard to just be yourself around other people, constantly express emotions, needs, and boundaries, what will happen is that you will meet your, I call them, walls of resistance. If you have ever tried these things, to just express from one second to another all of your emotions, needs, and boundaries, you might will meet these walls. Some people might call these walls of resistance also blockages, because they feel really heavy, they feel like you are blocked. And these walls were built by our brain to protect our innermost self from getting hurt. I also made a graphics for these walls of resistance here, and these walls consists out of guilt, out of shame, and out of anxiety, and therefore keep you locked within those emotions. So you can't go left, you can't go right. You would love to just express your emotions and needs, but guilt, shame, and anxiety keep you trapped within those walls, and you can't just express your inner truth. Tim Fletcher, for example, labels these walls as the shame-based self. Some might say it's the inner critic, it's the protector or guardian. In IFS therapy, for example, these instances are called managers and firefighters. However you call them, if you meet them, you will know that they block you. Now, if we can't break the mask and just can't break the walls neither, because that would be disastrous for us to give up all of our protection we use for ourselves to feel safe for so long, what is the solution to this dilemma? Or what are the solutions to possibly feel safe again around other people? Now, as far as I understood, all of our experiences and past wounds are also partly memorized in our unconscious mind. Some of them we don't have access to at all, and that's especially true for those memories who happened really, really early on in life. When we were children, we were babies, when we are just born within the first couple of months, and when we experience trauma there and traumatic experiences, then those are enormously deep installed within our unconscious mind. Now, what happens when we are triggered and we don't understand why we feel that way? That's, by the way, a blind spot then. What happens there is our unconscious constantly checks up if there are threats and if there is something that's reminding the unconscious to what happened in the past. If such a situation appears, then the unconscious informs our central nervous system to react physically, because that's what we do when we protect ourselves. We get ourselves in the freeze state, in the flight state, in the fight state. That's the result for us of feeling unsafe, right? So we spot that there is something going on. Our nervous system picks up on that. And then we have this feeling of, oh my gosh, there is something going on. We feel unsafe physically and emotionally. To resolve complex trauma, we need to directly address our unconscious while, that's important, feeling safe, while remaining the feeling of safety. And that's the most fundamental explanation to resolve complex trauma symptoms that I came up so far, I think. I repeat that to you. To resolve complex trauma, we need to address our unconscious directly while feeling safe. And in this episode, I said I want to focus on solutions, how to resolve complex trauma symptoms. And this is what we do now. We discuss various ways to finally address our unconscious directly while feeling safe. I came up with different possible solutions here to address the unconscious directly. The first one is, I think, the path most of us are on, and that's the long and hard way. I think this way is the path most of us are probably on and will attempt, and me as well, and I'm not even close to finishing it. But it's working like this. When you had difficult experience in the past, for example, as a child, and therefore you struggle with various trauma symptoms as an adult now, then you have to get yourself into a safe relationship or into various safe relationships in the here and now, and then starting step by step learning to communicate emotions, needs, and boundaries within that safe environment. Therefore, what will happen is that in those relationships, you will constantly make positive experiences on a conscious level, and you will learn that it's safe today, that there are no threats going on most of the times, and that you can share your emotions, needs, and boundaries, that you are okay the way you are, that you are beautiful the way you are. And these conscious experiences you will make during your daily lives are therefore step by step transferred to the unconscious. I think that's also some form of exposure therapy, because we are exposing ourselves to the potential threats. If you, for example, have the fear of a relationship of intimacy and you try to attempt a relationship, or you are within a relationship, within a safe environment, then you can slowly learn how to break free from these symptoms. And therefore you are getting through the walls of guilt, of shame, of anxiety slowly over time. But yeah, I'm 100% aware that that's a super, super slow process of healing, but it's definitely the most common way. And I think also the most brave way if you're able to expose yourself in tiny steps to those things that appear like a threat to you. I think the best thing about this long and hard way is definitely that all of us can try to attempt this way, and that we definitely have some influence on our healing from those symptoms. That's probably not true about number 2, which I call here big life events, because sometimes, and you may have heard those stories, big life events cause a lot of change in us by shaking our unconscious and waking us up from the illusion we're living. Often severe events such as death of a close one, disease, or personal pain cause our deep beliefs to change, and this is why they reach our deep levels within our unconscious and transform them. Those events can implant a conviction in us that we have to change something now. An example for such a big life event is the near-death experience of an overweight survivor of a heart attack that might convince him or her to start to lose weight and switch to a healthy diet instantly. Because this severe life event that he or she might die just because of their bad nutrition, of their bad health behavior, might therefore change their lives to the good and give them the opportunity to extend their lives. Big life event. The problem with those big life events is that they can't be really planned, and they often are caused by a really destructive event, which I don't wish to anyone. But still, change can occur from these big life events because they really shake up your unconscious memories. Number 3, hypnosis. Hypnosis is an interesting topic because it directly addresses our unconscious mind and memories. And therapeutic hypnosis is done by a professional hypnotherapist within a safe setting or environment. And I personally know stories, for example, that people quit smoking because after hypnosis they were disgusted by cigarettes just after 1 or 2 sessions. And it appears to be super helpful for anxiety, panic attacks, and complex trauma symptoms as well. This is what Dr. David Spiegel, for example, says in the Andrew Huberman podcast. I myself have done a hypnosis-like session to some experiences of my inner child with my first therapist, and after that, I had to say I felt insanely safe and slept like a baby without any worries for the first time within a long, long period of time. And the thing is that it didn't last that long for me, but I think it wasn't also a proper guided hypnosis session with a concrete goal, with a concrete thing I wanted to resolve. So it was more just like a trip I was doing with my therapist, a trip to my inner child. I personally think about looking for another good hypnotherapist as well to do another session and maybe to do a guided hypnosis to really work on a specific topic, because I haven't done that before. But I'm also curious what you guys think about hypnosis out there. Have you ever tried hypnosis? Was it helpful for you? Please share that in the comments so we can have some insights if hypnosis is a great way to resolve and work on complex trauma symptoms to finally feel safe again. Also, personally, I tried some self-hypnosis strategies, and I can recommend the Reverie app by Dr. David Spiegel. It's free to try on iOS at the moment, and the sessions, what I really like about them, are really, really professional, but on the other hand, they do not address the specific anxiety or trauma topics, so that's definitely a con. But then there are also guided hypnosis sessions on YouTube, for example, by Andrew Major. I also link them to you down in the description. Those sessions are definitely longer and they address specific challenges. So I really like them. I did one yesterday to better fall asleep, and that one worked really good. Number 4, psychedelics. This section, I have to say, is definitely not a recommendation. Neither I have experiences with psychedelic substances, so I have never tried any. But if you tried them, if you did attempt psychedelic trips, maybe even specifically on the purpose to address complex trauma symptoms, definitely leave me a comment below. I'm also really curious about your experiences here because I still don't have any, but I hear on so many podcasts that psychedelics might be a super helpful thing. Because psychedelic substances can open a direct channel to your unconscious, people also report things like ego death, so the walls of resistance are shut down. You have no protection, no sense of protection anymore. On the other hand, this can also be definitely dangerous because if you are not aware at all of what's behind your walls of resistance, of what's behind those sensations of toxic shame, guilt, and anxiety, this definitely can cause panic attacks, mental breakdowns, and other things. And this is not what you want from such a trip. So definitely, if you think about addressing your trauma symptoms while using psychedelics, definitely talk with a therapist, with a doctor about that. And if I would do such a trip, I would definitely do it within a guided and safe setting and environment, and not just at home or wherever. There are also studies on psilocybin, for example, as a psychoactive substance used to treat PTSD symptoms, and in some cases it definitely showed an improvement of life quality as shown here. Nevertheless, there is also the discussion and debate around the use of psychedelics for PTSD therapy, especially around the risk of having, as I said, a bad trip or having re-experiencing panic attacks and flashbacks. So there are definitely risks included when trying to use psychoactive substances to address your unconscious mind. Number 5, deep meditation. And I think deep meditation brings you in similar brain states as the psychedelic substances would do. It's to some degree also similar to hypnosis because you're awake, but you are super relaxed and you're super focused and therefore can work with unconscious memories. This way you can definitely address these better. Guided meditations also help you to experience new helpful scenarios, for example, like I did with working with the inner child within my therapy session. Deep meditation also has the big advantage that you can do it within the therapy session. You have influence on your unconscious and it's something you can do in a safe setting. Then number 6, lucid dreams. I don't know if you have heard about lucid dreams. Dreaming itself is definitely something that puts your brain in the state where things from the unconscious mind will come up. And do you know these days where you wake up and you were really, really impacted by something you have dreamed? Maybe it was a deep desire or something you actually struggle with in your daily life. Because within your dreams, you address these unconscious memories. And already Carl Gustav Jung talked a lot about the importance of dreams and the connection with the unconscious. And if we could access our dreams through learning to dream lucid, we can influence our unconscious and install new beliefs and experiences within our sleep. So lucid dreaming is exactly that. You enter a dream, but you are still consciously aware that you are entering that dream. So you are in that really relaxed state, but you have an influence on the dream itself. If you have watched the movie Inception, you can partly understand or imagine how working with the unconscious while dreaming or while dreaming lucid can work. It's probably not for most of us because it's a really difficult skill to learn, but if you're willing to address the unconscious like that, you can definitely do it. Using these fixed methods, and there may be more. If you know more methods to address the unconscious within a safe setting, definitely let me know in the comments. We can start to resolve complex trauma symptoms, especially as a highly sensitive person. And now some final thoughts from my side. I think that whatever solution you will attempt, it's definitely important to continuously do so, to relearn that there are way less threats going on than we imagine constantly. If you are now on the hard way, if you're now on that first path that you try to step by step, try to reaccess your emotions, your needs, try to set boundaries within a safe setting and environment, then you're definitely good to go. If you want to try some of the other methods, maybe also in addition to that, then that's a great extension and maybe an accelerator to resolve complex trauma symptoms more quick. I'm definitely curious which methods you have maybe tried out there. Maybe there are also different other aspects I haven't mentioned here. So definitely share your experiences in the comments below that episode. And if you want to support that podcast, definitely subscribe on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts. Leave me a 5-star review, and I see and speak to you in the next episode. Have a great day.